Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Killport Podcast, episode 321. I'm Benjamin Yoder. Here today, talked about, I play some video games. We're going to talk about some video games, not in depth. I don't want to go any deep dives. I thought I'd talk about Dragon Mark for Death this week, but I'm too lazy. Last week I recorded like on a Friday. This week it's a Sunday night again, baby. So just shoving all this in here at the last moment. But yeah, just like I don't really feel in the mood to talk about Dragon Mark for Death tonight. So we talked about Dragon Mark for Death a long time ago, so it's not a big deal if I don't revisit it. Got some video games to talk about. We also I did a little poking around with some DS fan server stuff, so I can talk a little bit about that. And then we have a new Valis collection that got announced, so we're gonna look at that, and then just a few other smaller things, and a follow up on a story that we talked about many years ago. It kind of doesn't really fall within our purview of things we talk about that often anymore, but for the sake of something that we had been talking about over the course of many years in the past, I thought we should at least finally see the conclusion. So that's a quick rundown for this week. I think it'll probably be a shorter episode, but I always say that, and then who knows? I look over and it's like 45 minutes in. Quick little personal update, just as a heads up. I will be going to EVO for the first time this upcoming weekend, assuming nothing happens in the time between then. But I went ahead and bought tickets to Saturday, so I'll be going in there and poke my nose around. I think if it wasn't apparent last week, we were talking about like the Vegas mental health and like gaming event kind of thing. Like I don't really have a lot of like direct thoughts on esports. I just don't really care that much. Like, yeah, it's an important part of the industry. I try to be aware of it and things like that. But like personally, I'm just not really into EVO, and why that is a whole other thing. I was actually talking to some friends about that. I was just like, there's a lot of things about EVO that I think just like don't vibe with me personally. But anyways, that being said, I'll be going there first time. I should have gone there many years ago, but I kept forgetting. And then also last year I had the opportunity to go. I was like, I'm just going to stay home and play Xenoblade instead. So first time I'm going to go. I'll definitely talk about that, assuming next week, unless I record earlier than Saturday, which is a very real possibility. So I guess I'm preemptively telling you this. Anyways, but in terms of games I started playing this week, or I was playing this week, I did finally go forward with playing Snowbreak Containment Zone. I was on the edge of it for a long time, but then a friend of mine was just like, I'm going to play it. And I was like, okay, good enough. I'll go ahead and download it now. This is that one mobile free-to-play third-person shooter that was described to me as like a Genshin Impact third-person shooter. And I generally like shooters and things like that, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to play a game like that. And, I'm not a huge like open world kind of person when it comes to games too. And the impression I get is that Genshin Impact largely like an open world game, and so I don't really have a lot of interest in that. But Snowbreak Containment Zone is largely compartmentalized in a way that and sometimes I don't necessarily know if I like, because it is a mobile game first and foremost. I'm playing it on PC, and much of the story quests and things like that just feel way too short to feel satisfying. And then you just get like kind of pummeled with like in my opinion, not a great story. I think it's like fine. I think the problem is more than anything is I just don't care about any of the characters. And it probably doesn't help that there's like a disconnect between the characters in the story and the characters that you're interacting with in your own play session, right? Like I like the character Nita a lot, I think her name is. And like, because she's not a part of my crew and I can't like do any of the story events around her, Nita, despite being in the main story, just doesn't feel like a character that's prevalent in the game, right? So I have a bunch of characters that I've, pulled because in the time frame that you play, you get that. I just don't care about any of them. So like I have actually had like all the character stories, I think, for a lot of them at this point, just sitting there, and I'm just like, I should do it. It gives you EXP and stuff, so I should do them. I kind of just don't care, though. Anyways, and you like menu a bunch of stuff like that. But overall, I think the game is feeling pretty well so far, and I just got to kind of get over some of those mobile game traps of just like hoarding everything, because I'm like, if I spend things poorly, the game's going to punish me by being like, well, you didn't do it right, but if you spent money now, you could do it right again. Which I think I just need to, if that happens, I just need to let the game do that to me, right? And then that will just affect my opinion on the game. I don't need to sit there and be super precious about all the resources, but I think mobile games have generally trained me to expect scarcity, especially after the first like 15 to 20 hours. And so I'm probably around like 10 hours in at this point. I think I'm like halfway through the story chapters that I can see. At least there's like 10 that appear on the story listing. But yeah, I don't know. It's fun. I think there's a lot of things I would prefer about it to be better, but I think as a short login, play this shooter, and, you know, it's kind of like, it definitely feels a lot better play than like something like Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, in my opinion, and the dungeons feel more interesting. Just the dungeons don't feel long enough is the big thing, but I do like what is there generally, and thankfully when you play some of the other modes, they have longer dungeons you can do and things like that, so generally enjoying that. And yeah, I don't know. That's about what I feel. It visually looks pretty nice. I would say there's something like kind of budget about it too, especially the story, but it like doesn't feel that budget. It just feels like just kind of budget. I don't know. It's weird to say it that way, but I do have this weird, I don't know what the problem is. I have this problem where like I have a hard time telling who is saying what. And I don't know if it has to do with like the characters, like name text, or the fact that like the characters don't like, they like highlight them on screen when they're talking, but like it's not super obvious all the time. I don't know what it is, but like something I have a hard time figuring out whose dialogue belongs to who when I play that game, and I don't really know why. There's like no voice acting for the most part, so, or for the majority of the game there's no voice acting. Also it has that problem where like all the text story that is like in combat, and like I'm shooting, you know, right now I'm shooting at things. I'm not reading any of the boxes that are appearing right now. Sorry. like I don't think that works unless you have like, you know, voice acting your language, unfortunately. The Gunvolt curse, Gunvolt 1 and 2 at least. I don't know if they ever brought that back for Gunvolt 3 where they have dialogue mid-stage. I know the X games definitely cut it out, so that was fun. And then I've also been playing more Tokiden. I think I mentioned before that, you know, there's kind of a single player component to playing Tokiden, even though it's part of my multiplayer group thing. But Tokiden Kiwami is a re-release of a PSP game, but we're playing the PS4 and Vita. Well, yeah, someone I know is playing the Vita version, I think, but we're playing the PS4 version, or I am. And I finished up like the initial Tokiden story arc kind of thing. And I think like the big takeaway I took is like something I've always thought with like Tokiden 2 specifically, like there's like something about the story I really like, and I never really could put my finger on it. And I think a lot of it just comes from like, it's a story very much that focuses around death. I talked a lot about this a few weeks ago with like Mitamas and things like that, and how you kind of get to see their final moments. And I think most of the story elements of the game is about like coming to terms with like somebody's death and saying things like that. Or in some cases, like, you know, accepting death to the point that, like, it's not that it's better that somebody died, but they died and that's just kind of how life is going forward, kind of thing. And I think that is, like, a big part of why I like Tokiden's story. I could be wrong, but I think that, like, that humming and hawing it over, that has been the thing. They're also toward the later part of the Kiwami. There was some scenes where like the Mitamas kind of all talk to each other, which I thought was like really fun and cute. So I'm really glad that was there as well. But wrap that up. And then I also played Halo Fireteam Raven. I guess in the context of what I should be saying is I went into round 1 and played some video games. The only game here I really want to talk about is Halo Fireteam Raven. I played Daytona. I don't even know what Daytona game it was. Like, I didn't recognize it, but I think it is a modern Daytona game. And then also there's like Mission Impossible Arcade, which I didn't care for that game that much. It's fine. It's like a lot of shooters. It's very hard for shooters to really jump out at me. And there's actually like some game called Levels Addictive Puzzle Game, which was like a Nessica, which is like the who owned Nessica. So like in Japan, there's like these arcades where they have like a network that they're connected to, and then they have machines that can play multiple games and stuff like that. And I believe the Nessica machine is the one I was interacting with in this case. And a lot of times it's just a bunch of fighting games and stuff like that. In Japan, I definitely saw different types of games there. You had the Milk-chan game and the like rhythm shooter kind of stuff. But I Levels was like a weird little puzzle game where you like move a little puzzle piece around and like use that to like break other puzzle pieces that you combine to like get this piece to have more points. It's kind of weird to explain because it was like super simple, but it was like so simple. I looked at it, I was like, there's gotta be something there. And I played it, and I actually only played it for one round, but I actually did really enjoy it. It kind of reminds me of, have you ever seen those mobile game ads where they have like the little guy that they like point to, and there's like monsters with numbers over their head, and they point it to the guy that's like that has the lower number, and that increases one guy's gear score. And it looks as dumb as just basically never selecting something that's like below your number. It kind of takes that concept but makes it an actual video game where it's about making sure the things you're killing aren't things that are going to lock your high powered character, in a place that it's surrounded by higher power characters, so you can't actually access them anymore. And then to how you level up characters is by combining characters of the same number and things like that. I say characters, they're not really characters. They're just like tiles that show a little guy with a sword on it or something like that, like a stick figure kind of thing. So it was very cute. Anyways, levels was pretty cool. But the one game I want to talk about was Halo Fireteam Raven. I played this. This is the Halo on-rail shooter. And I believe it's set in the context of Halo 1 or something like that. But I was kind of curious because, Halo as a shooter is a very particular thing, right? And I totally kind of expected that, bring it to the arcade, there would not be that much attempt to hold on to that concept. I could be wrong, but I didn't really feel like I was 100% sure that they were going to try to hold on to that concept. But I think initially I thought maybe, though, there would be kind of a shield mechanic, because if you don't know, in Halo, when you get shot, it takes a shield down, and then once your shield's gone, then that's where your little fleshy underbelly is, right? And that's when you actually die, is when you get hit by that. And, a lot of shooters in the industry adopted this, idea to some extent, where, instead of a shield, you just have like a health that regenerates kind of thing, after you like stay behind cover for like 2 seconds kind of thing, right? And then but in the case of Halo, it's actually a shield, which makes a lot more sense, like from a concept standpoint. But how they handle this game, though, is you have a shield. And so I was like, oh, maybe your shield will like fill back up, or it's the same shield graphic icon. And I thought specifically this would make sense because when characters show up on screen in that game, they shoot almost immediately. Like, I do not know how you avoid being shot. So I was like, oh, well, maybe, you just have to make sure you don't get shot enough this many times during an encounter, and then your shield refills. No, your shield is your health. So you get on screen, and you're trying to kill these guys, and they are just hitting you from the get-go. It's not like other shooters where there's a marker, and you have to, like, figure out who you're shooting first. It is just, guy comes out, and he's just blazing you up. There's no cover mechanics, no nothing. So it literally just comes down to, essentially minimizing as much damage as possible. And maybe there's a world where, if you kill things in the right order, that there is, that's enough HP to get through without spending any money, but the HP carries over. So, like, I don't know. I feel like it would have made a lot more sense to make a shield mechanic and then maybe make it so in individual encounters, the game's a lot more punishing if you let enemies pierce your shield, right? And make it so if your shield's down, it's just basically over, right? But because it doesn't do that, it just feels like a game that's just constantly draining your HP with nothing you can do about it. And I thought that was really unfortunate because aesthetically, it does feel like Halo in a lot of ways. And it's kind of neat to see Halo in a different context like that. I mean, there's the Spartan Assault games, so... but yeah, I don't know. It just was like, it's one of those things where like, it felt like a lot of the pieces were there to make a Halo on-rail shooter feel fine. And like, I'm not saying it was like anything crazy, but just like, it would have been like a okay, on-rail shooter. But the fact that it just drains your HP the way it does, I just don't see that game ever making sense, like, to play, without just committing to like having an unknown amount of money that you're about to drain from your pocket. And going to like a round one or a Dave and Buster's is not cheap. Like, it is expensive to play those games, bit by bit, right? And so it just seems really unforgiving in a way that I just really was like, I don't know. It's like weirdly disappointing because I feel like it just kind of sucks a lot of the fun out of that game in a way that I haven't experienced with many other arcade games. Because I've played arcade games where it feels like it's brutal up front, and you can learn to minimize the damage you take and things like this. But because this is an on-rail shooters with no cover and no like indicator of who's going to shoot you when, and seemingly no way to kill enemies except for maybe everybody focus firing on every correct enemy in the right order or something like that, right? I really look at it and just say, I don't know how you play this game and it not just feel like you're just having your life drained from you. I don't know. If you like Halo, Fire Team Raven, let me know. I'd be really curious what your thoughts are. That was my impression playing like 2 or 3 levels. I think we spent a handful of credits on it, or handful, like 3. But like round 1, that's like 30, 35 credits, right? Which I don't know. They do that weird thing where like you don't know how much money you're spending, which sucks. I think it's like 80 credits for $20 or something like that, right? So I don't know. It's expensive. So, anyways, that's it, and that's all I have played recently. Oh, I'm a liar. Well, I technically haven't played. I did want to talk a little bit before we get. I was about to put us in the Jillian corner, put us in the boxing ring with Jillian, so she can pummel us with her questions. But no, before we do that, we actually got to talk about one more thing. So if you don't know, with my friends, I was talking to them briefly about maybe playing some DS and Wii games online. Whether that realistically ever happens is another thing, right? Like it is, there are hurdles to be jumped that are just like hurdles that people, I don't think will be necessarily always be willing to jump over, right? Just because it's like not a video game, you just put it in and plug in. But one thing I always did want to try to just figure out is like, how is the experience of trying to load up a game like Phantasy Star Zero or Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Echoes of Time through something like Melon DS, and what does that online experience look like from a setup perspective? I'm not playing it at this point, so I don't know like how Melon DS runs or anything like that. But I was just really curious, and it actually was like way easier than I thought to set up, because essentially you just have to have a DS BIOS first and foremost, legally your own, and then also a copy of the game, the ISO, or what was it? I think it's like a ROM file for DS. I don't remember 100% sure. And then so basically you just go into like the Nintendo DS's like system settings, and like Melon has like. Or, I mean, the DS is weird with online stuff. It's not really, it's like a system settings menu, but it's like accessible through the game. I'm curious if that like Wi-Fi menu is like on the actual DS BIOS, or if that's dependent on the game itself. I've never thought about that. I would be very curious, because you can only access it when you launch a game, but then it kills the game basically. I don't think it actually kills the game, but like it moves you to a interface that feels like the DS's like user interface kind of thing. But you can never access that menu from the standard DS's UI. If you like turn it on without a cartridge in, you can't just go mess with your Wi-Fi settings or something like that, right? All that aside. So you go into there and you basically, the Melon one, I'm trying to remember if it was like a part of the BIOS that I used, or if it was something that like the emulator automatically populates, but there is like a Melon BIOS in there. But you basically just got to go in and put in like information to basically connect it, to the WeFme servers, or whatever they're called, or something like that. And then you're pretty much just good to go. It just straight up works, and that's kind of it. So that might have sounded complicated, but it's like super, super easy. I was really surprised. So I had a couple conversations. I used the guide that was in the Phantasy Star Zero Discord, which if you ever want to play Phantasy Star Zero online, that Discord still seems relatively alive. So just a heads up on that. I would like to play Phantasy Star Zero online at some point, because I really didn't play a lot of it online back in the day, for a lot of reasons. But I did kind of want to play that online, or like evaluate it for our group if we want to play online. And unfortunately, like kind of the problem is like if people have to play offline separately, like in the Tokiden situation, people are not particularly fond of that for good reasons. I understand. It is even hard on my side with like the Tokiden thing, but to get to Phantasy Star Zero to the point that you have actual content, you'd have to have at least the host go through the story at least once. But once you go through the story once, which is still like a good 15-20 hours, you basically have access to everything. And then the other exception is that if you want to get hard mode before you're level 30, you need to finish like, is it normal story mode? Maybe you just need to already go ahead and finish normal stories. Maybe it doesn't even matter that much, but you might want to get into one of those hard or ultimate modes earlier, so you need to like go and finish the story so you get access to it earlier. Otherwise, the game at some point, if you get like a high enough level, it's just like, okay, you can go play ultimate. But I believe people were saying that like grinding wise, it makes more sense to go just like wrap it up. So like ideally, everyone would have played this through the story, through every difficulty basically, so 3 times. But, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But if you're just playing, by yourself casually, that's like not a problem at all. So yeah, anyways, I don't know where I was trying to go with that, but I was just, I guess, explaining what I found. I also messed around with Echoes of Time a little bit, which is Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles 1, which is the one I actually think that is most likely to happen, if anything. And with Echoes of Time specifically, it has the same problem that like Crystal Chronicles Remake has, where only one player gets story progress. So whoever's the host is the one getting the story progress and nobody else is. Does that impact your ability to like upgrade gear or anything like that? I don't think so. I don't know for sure. But generally, it seems like it is not a requirement for you to, go play on your own if you don't want to, from what I was reading. So, but yeah, it is surprisingly easy to set up. Now, if you want to play it on actual hardware, that's kind of a different question. There is always the issue of like the DS requires WEP for wireless security, which is at this point completely out of date. And I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if many modern routers and stuff don't actually support you to do that. I think mine, I can do it. I have to just go through a bunch of security settings and be like, yes, I am absolutely sure I want to have WEP, and then like hide the network because obviously it's like incredibly unsecure. But hide as best I can. But I'm sure that doesn't really actually do anything. If anybody wants to get into my router, I'm curious like how many people are actively looking at WEP wireless signals at this point though. And then the other options seem to be like you can use your like phone as like a hotspot, and there's like WEP encryption, or maybe you can do open. I'm not sure which one it is. So. But it seems like there's a way for you to do that too. For Echoes of Time, I would probably play on the Wii, which means I can just do an Ethernet connection, right? But for Phantasy Star Zero, that would require me to go through some hoops to make that work. So anyways, that was that whole adventure. So if you do want to play games on those fan servers, the Wii is very easy to do so, even on like real console. You just got to basically load up a certain app. I guess I forgot what it's called. It's like some kind of like one of the things. It just like basically just auto patches your disc to go to the right place. I think Mario Kart, they like even have it set up where you don't even need to do that patch. You just have to like put in specific information into the Wii's like network information or something like that. But yeah, it seems like pretty straightforward for Metal and DS as well if you're cool with playing on emulators as well. It seems like they're still working on local wireless stuff, which is still pretty exciting, right? But I did not get a like reading on how effective that local wireless is. Last time I really read into it, it seemed like the game expects less latency than there is online. And so a lot of games just kind of like break and fumble if you try to force their local wireless connection over a network kind of thing. So yeah, but I don't know. I think all that stuff's super interesting, and I'm really glad people are keeping that stuff alive. And maybe I'll get back to Phantasy Star Zero someday and play online. I wouldn't mind even just like loading up my old characters and playing with people in that community, and just going through those quests, because I just don't know what those online quests look like. But I'm gonna take a strong guess that they're going to look almost exactly like the quests offline, just maybe slightly different variations of room layouts. So probably not missing much there. But if I could with like my multiplayer group, that would be fun as well. But I just don't know how many people are willing to hop over that hurdle for Phantasy Star Zero. Jillian, it's your time, your corner. Jillian supports me on Ko-fi. Thank you so much, Jillian, for supporting me on Ko-fi. You can support me on Ko-fi if you want to, and ask a question if you want, or, just however I'm feeling this week. Maybe you need to give me money to do that. Maybe you don't. At this point, I don't know anymore. I'm not going to think about it until it's an actual problem. Jillian is asking questions, though, because she can. And Jillian this week asks, what's your favorite black box NES games? I don't know how many of these games I've actually played in total. But I did pull up a list and kind of like try to figure out what the ones that like made the biggest impressions on me were. And I think I think I may have played like Gyromite at some point. Like when I was a kid, I just don't remember like 100% super well like what I played. But in my adult life, I definitely really liked Excite Bike. That's probably my favorite Black Box NES game. I think, I just really like the depth that there is to the racing of that game, despite it looking so simple, right? But with like the angling of your car and overheating of the engine, I think they do a lot with a little in Excite Bike, which I think is very cool. I mean, Excite Truck more or less is the same concept, but in 3D. Obviously, there's differences, and like it's like not that far off from what Excite Bike 1 was on the NES, right? And I think that's really cool. I would like to play some of the other Excite Bike versions. I think there is the Satellaview version that's out there that you can play, but I have not tried to play that yet, but that would be kind of fun to look at because I do really like that game. Balloon Fight's pretty cool. I put that right after Excite Bike probably. I don't know if there's much to say about Balloon Fight. I mean, I feel like every conversation of Balloon Fight just comes down to it's Joust, but not, right? And that's kind of a boring conversation to have, right? But I guess there's maybe, I don't know, how would you make the discussion of Balloon Fight interesting? I mean, really, I think it's just that, like, it's like I'm trying to think, like, how I'm mentally envisioning this right now is there's, like, a zone around an enemy where it, like, gets more and more tense. And, like, I feel like you could paint the tense zones in a Balloon Fight based off character positioning and, like, where they're at. And you could, like, just like draw little hitboxes that are not so much hitboxes of how they affect you in the game, but like hitboxes of what you feel when you're playing Balloon Fight. But it does a really good job, I think, of just driving up tension and things like that as you fight against different characters who are moving at different rates and different speeds and things like that, right? Which largely is the Joust experience. But maybe I guess in the case of Balloon Fight, it's a little bit more clear where your hitbox is, I feel like, versus Joust or something like that. So is that more exciting? I feel like that is like more, I feel like everyone goes, oh, it's a Joust clone, and including myself. And I feel like maybe there should be a better conversation there. Again, we're talking about Black Box NES games. So like at the end of the day, what can you really say a lot of times? But I feel like that is a good one. I mean, I would say you could say a lot about Excite Bike, honestly. Black Box NES games are cool. Do you know Super Mario Brothers is also a Black Box NES game? I was like, look at this list. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is. It feels kind of weird because it doesn't feel like a Black Box NES game in spirit, which is, just kind of these more almost like evolved Atari-esque experiences when it comes to Nintendo software at that time. So Super Mario Brothers feels really out of place. But yeah, that's the third game on my list here for Black Box games. I guess, I don't know if I specified this earlier. I'm going in order from top to bottom of like what I prefer all the games that I have played. I don't need to talk about Super Mario Brothers. You guys know what that video game is. I don't think I have any particularly interesting insights into Super Mario Brothers. Ice Climber, very cool game with a bad jump. I think there is probably, this probably exists, but in my mind, if it doesn't exist, I think there's a world where you simply change how the ice climbers jump, and that game is a lot better. But I appreciate the concept of Ice Climber at the very least, and I think I finished all the mountains in that game, so very exciting. I guess one thing I didn't put on here is Wrecking Crew. Wrecking Crew is a game I tried to sit down and play through at some point, and then kind of gave up. Having a vivid memory of being in college and playing Wrecking Crew in right on the other side of a student support building wall or something. That's just what I see in my mind right now. Anyways, Clue Land. Clue Land's pretty cool. I've only ever played Clue Land in the context of Animal Crossing. I don't really know how Clue Land works or why it's fun, but I think the visual design's really neat, and I like the sound effects and stuff like that. The noise when you hit the little rupees from Zelda or whatever they are. I'm curious how close the sprites are, if they actually are those little rupees from Zelda or not. But yeah, that's a cool game. I don't really know. I don't think I finished that game or quote finished it. Played it to the depth that I know there's a lot of variety there. But it's kind of an interesting take on I guess a P-Cross style game or something like that, right? I don't know. You make images. That's the point of Clue Land, right? Just go around and try to find the image. Baseball. Baseball. I have a review of baseball. My first review on the internet, video review on the internet, was baseball. Baseball is baseball. It's pretty cool. Baseball. it's baseball. That video is like the most like me trying to be classic game room ever, and also I like don't talk for most of the video. And a very, very slight attempts at humor in there as well. And the last game on this list is Duck Hunt. I think Duck Hunt's fine. I just don't like, I don't know. I think it's cool in concept. I feel like every console back then is just like, we have a gun game too. At least it's a gun game that has graphics, I guess. I don't know. There is my ranking of Black Box NES games. Excite Bike is my favorite though. But yeah, thank you again, Jillian. Thank you for supporting me on Ko-fi. Again, if you want to support me on Ko-fi, you can do so using a URL in the description of the podcast or in the description of the YouTube video or whatever. Somewhere on my website, you can go to onekishore.com. There's like a Ko-fi widget that was embedded in there that was broken for like a day. And then I emailed the Ko-fi people and they were like, oh, sorry, we fixed it. I was like, oh, thank you very much. And then in that process, I realized, I don't know for how long, probably for a long time, the Twitter API, like Twitter embed on my website was also broken. Probably when all that stuff happened with like Elon and stuff like that. So I eventually just took the Twitter feed off the website. But now there's a PCFX fan club ad there that I made. I made it. It's not anything special. And, guess what? Nobody goes to my website but me. So the one who's going to click it is me. So if you click it, though, it takes you to the YouTube page for PCFX fan club. How exciting. We got video games to talk about. Indie game, big game, experimental game. And then the first game we're going to talk about here, Valis Collection 3 got announced. Guess what, guys? I still have never played a Valis game. Pretty sure we've talked about every single one of these Valis collections since they come out. This caught my eye, though, because I've been kind of like watching these Valis collections and like just hoping they keep putting interesting things in there. And I feel like at this point, if you asked me like which games are in these collections and which are like actually meaningful, like this has Valis 3 for the Mega Drive in this collection. Buddy, if you told me Valis 3 was in any other collection of the Valis games, the Valis collections, I probably would have been like, yeah, probably is in there. Anyways, the things that caught my eye, though, is that there is a PC-8801 and a MK2SR. I don't know what the MK2SR thing is. Mark II Super Robot. I don't know. For the Phantasm Soldier Valis in there. And there's also the MSX2 version of Valis, the Phantasm Soldier, so that's pretty cool. Otherwise, just Famicom, Mega Drive, and Super Famicom games. Curious how many games are left in that whole series, but yeah, I don't know. That's cool. I like that. I like that they've been putting those out, having a good time. I had a conversation recently that was like, I kind of just want to know. Everyone makes fun of the last Valis game because it's an erotic arrow game, right? I kind of want somebody to look at it seriously. In the modern day, when we are looking at video games like that, in a lot more educated ways, right? Go like look at Speedy Noel's channels. I don't always say like Speedy Noel's doing the thing I always wanted to do and just like never had the 4-2-2 do over there on her channel. Which she gave me a shout out recently. It was very nice of her. Although I found out later, I was like, oh yeah, I actually submitted my YouTube channel for a shout out at some point, and I felt silly about like being like, oh, she shouted me out. But I appreciate it. And she talked about my Matt Blund's Fall video, which was very nice of her as well. And I also got a shout out from the guy who runs the Critical Hit bar that I went in Japan. It's kind of funny because like he put up a YouTube video, a pretty good one actually. I know we were talking about Valis, but we'll get back to it. He put out a YouTube video that was like about like pixel art and stuff like that, and I actually really liked it a lot, which I was kind of surprised because that's the type of video I feel like I don't really care to watch anymore. But I felt like it was really good, and I think I'm wondering if like part of what I like a lot about certain YouTubers is confidence in their unconfidence. like I think about like Annie Austin and stuff, and like he does this whole thing. He's a vibes YouTube channel basically, and like Annie Austin, like this is not the Critical Hit guy, like, but he's like he seems very aware that like the stuff he's talking about is not that important, which I really like. I think that's why it works for me. I think if you like feel you're too self-important, it kind of comes off that way, whether you actually are or not. And like people like that confidence, I will say. So I feel like for me, and I think I try to do this, is to be confident in my incompetence, but still, I think there's like a weird like line you balance with that. So, and I think his username's like Patui or something like that. I don't know. I don't actually know his real name now that I think about it, but nice fellow, whatever it is. I'll link the YouTube video in the description. Like he's like, I don't actually know anything about pixel art stuff, but I had thoughts, and then I looked at other people who are like more academic, and they had thoughts that lined up with my thoughts, and I thought that was like a good way to present that whole thing, kind of thing. So I mean, it's just different ways to communicate, right? And I think you guys know already, listening to this, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know I question myself regularly. Like I feel like I often will finish a segment and be like, okay, what did I say? And then just like try to dismantle the things I just said out loud. But I think that I think it's like a good way to like keep yourself humble about it. Maybe be like, I actually don't know what I'm talking about if I think about it. That's why we call it video game development fan fiction. Anytime we talk about the intentions of game developers. So yeah, I don't know what we're talking about. Valis Collection has a cup now in the special edition. So if you want a Valis cup, there you go. That's the end of the Valis segment. I don't remember how we got here. We're moving on. So, maybe speaking in the vein of Speedy Noel, though, I saw this game that was kind of cute, or at least it seemed cute. I feel like in the promotional parts of this game, I actually didn't see. I'm explaining this before I even tell you what it is. Like, I didn't see what I was looking for, but the description it was appealing to me. It's a game called Seven Nights Ghost. Sorry, the punctuation there, or the pluralization. I don't know English stuff. This is a game where it's like what's that show? What's that TV show? The Ring, that movie. There's like the girl that comes out of the TV with like the nightgown on and the long black hair or whatever. I've never seen that movie. Don't know anything about it and kind of don't care. But this is a game where you're in an apartment and it seems like you're trying to go around and do like solve puzzles and stuff. Like if you've ever seen any of those kind of like, escape room games that people seem to play, it seems like one of those, right? You're going around, you're finding stuff. It's like a very janky game running in like Unity or something like that. And you like are doing like way deeper lore than there should be. Maybe I'm thinking of like essentially every popular video game these days that are like popular with people that like don't talk about video games ever. I think of that Blue Guy game with like the big smiley mouth and the sharp teeth. If you know popular video games, you know what I'm talking about with that, because that thing is like weirdly popular. But anyways, it kind of reminds me of that. But the concept seems to be that you are living in this house with this ghost. And it is not necessarily a antagonistic relationship you have with this ghost. It sounds like it might be like in some ways a romantic relationship you have with this ghost that kind of chases you around, which I don't like. If you've seen, there's a lot of parody stuff on that with like The Ring and stuff like that, with like the girl and the guy in the front of the TV getting together or something like that in whatever ways, right? It's a very like, I feel like common doujin trope or something like that. But it was kind of neat to see it like realized in a video game fashion here. And I kind of like the idea of that. As far as I can tell, like that trope, I will say, I feel like generally gets attached to like an 18+ thing a lot of times. I'm not saying it always is, but I feel like I've seen it more cases in 18+ scenarios than not. This does not seem to be an 18+ game. So in a lot of ways, I kind of find that more appealing because that makes it a little easier to consume and talk about it with people. If I'm trying to talk about erotic games, that's always the hard thing. It gets back to the whole Speedy Noel thing where like, I appreciate that she's able to talk about erotic games and do so confidently. Because I'm always like, I would love to talk about erotic games confidently, but at the end of the day, can't do that. Too hard. We've done it before with Blue Port J. But I think the fear I always have is that like people won't take you for your word a lot of times. And so like, even if you talk confidently about it, there's some people who will never want to listen to you, right? And so I bring up Blueport J all the time. So how much am I actually like deflecting from that is a whole other thing. Anyways, Blueport J, I'm not going to talk about it again. We've talked about it a lot. If you go to onecontroller.com and look up Blueport J, there's going to be like 8 different podcasts where I've talked about it. And then also the article I wrote after I played it that I'm going to guess probably isn't the most sensitive article in terms of how it's written because I didn't know what I was doing at the time. But anyways, all that aside, I thought it was a cute idea. So it comes out August 31st on Steam. Will I play it? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I remember it exists in a month, basically. So yeah. Big news. Actually, not. I was going to talk about something else, but let's talk about the other update. I don't think I actually alluded to this yet at this point, but speaking of erotic things, we talked about Illusion a couple weeks back. That was that H-Game developer who was shutting down, longtime H-Game developer. They renamed their Twitter to Project I-18 and deleted all their past tweets and posted a teaser image for a new game. So it seems like maybe they're shutting down the company as it was and reforming into a new organization now. Which honestly, part of me, what I was thinking, and I mean, I don't know that space very well at all. Part of me is like, this is a very long-running company who's doing a very old style of like selling physical copies for games through a storefront and stuff like that. And they sell stuff on Steam as well. So like, it seems like a very, as much as it like is a interesting company, it feels like a company that like kind of is past its prime in terms of what it was like aiming to do. I think that it'll be interesting to see like if this new fresher version of them kind of dissipates a lot of that stuff. Does that mean they're actually going to be good games? I don't know. We'll see. I don't even know if I would call Illusion games good games. I like, from what little I've seen of them, they don't read to me as super like well produced games. But you know, again, Illusion fans, let me know what you think. But yeah, they posted a picture. I think the only thing that's really notable about the teaser, it's just like a lady's blouse or something like that. Lady in a blouse or something like that. Is that it's got more of the anime aesthetic, so closer to like, I think the game was called like Koikatsu Sunshine or something like that. But I think I mentioned before that like Koikatsu Sunshine did not read to me as like a visually great looking game. It has like more anime aesthetic versus like the Honey Select stuff, where that was more like realistically styled, maybe closer to like a Tecmo Koei kind of like anime inspired realistic style kind of thing, right? But yeah, I was like curious if they were going to actually be able to put something together that looks more like a modern anime game in terms of aesthetics, like the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 kind of look kind of thing, right? So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. There's nothing really to say other than apparently they're not dead, but they're just like reorganizing maybe. Or someone hacked their Twitter account. Who can say? Maybe it's like a core part of the staff as well. I don't know. They have not really said anything other than just posted this teaser image and that's about it. And they repurposed their old Twitter account for it. So anyways, back to the big news story. That was the one that we were talking about forever ago and has finally come to pass. Final Fantasy 14 is finally coming to Xbox. I feel like we've been talking about this since 1.0. Maybe not since 1.0. I mean, I'm sure it came up at some point, but like, 2.0 for sure. We were talking about, why it wasn't on Xbox. I'm sure every version I was engaged in that game with, which was just really just up to heaven's word. I was like, why isn't this on Xbox? And they're finally bringing it to Xbox. So it only took, 6 versions later, but it got there. So way late. But, I think it's really cool that it's there. And I saw some people saying like, oh, Square Enix is finally going to Xbox again, like full force. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Like Final Fantasy 16 is still on PS5 only. So we'll see what happens. But I get the impression that this is just one of those things that, it was a long time coming and there probably wasn't that much benefit to, keeping it a PlayStation only kind of game. I wouldn't be surprised if it just would have been like a large task to try to bring all that stuff over to Xbox. But I don't know. It's a PC game as well, right? And I feel like a lot of people do PC to Xbox conversions a lot of times. But anyways, I don't know if it's Xbox One versions as well. I would assume so, given the PS4 is still running. Maybe it's just Xbox Series X and S. I feel like in my mind, I'm just imagining it. I'm gonna open this website open and see if it mentions it. But this just says Xbox. This just says Xbox. I'm gonna fill my mouth with words. I'm only seeing Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X in this Game Watch thing. But that probably makes sense, honestly. At this point, why make an original Xbox version? I think if anything, when you see games coming out now, the Xbox One version is the one that is typically missing because it seems like not many people are playing games on Xbox One anymore, which, it's only really notable in the context of PS4 version of games still also coming out. But, PS4 has a lot more impact in Japan than PS4 in general just has a lot more, I think, ongoing player base right now. But That's cool. There's also a new trailer. Like, so this is at the Vanafest. There you go. There's an old thing for you guys. That's old Final Fantasy 11 Fan Fest thing. This is from the Final Fantasy 14 Fan Festival. That was here in Vegas, actually. And it is, they showed off a new, trailer. I feel like I'm fumbling on my words here. They showed off a new trailer, for Dawn Trail, I think is what it's called. And it's got like a really fun summery vibe kind of thing, which I appreciated. So I will still not play that video game though. But it did make me think, I was like, hey, you know what game had a summery vibe that I still haven't played that I was like kind of interested in? Not Final Fantasy. Valkyria Chronicles 4's summer DLC where you do a beach mission. I was like, I should probably do that. It's been long enough. I think I could do a little taste of Valkyria Chronicles in my life again without investing into the probably 70 to 80 hour experience of getting all the character side stories and playing Valkyria Chronicles 3. So, yeah. And our last news story here is an experimental release. We previously talked about Square Enix releasing the Portopia serial murder case game. It's like old Famicom game. Probably an old PC game as well. I always forget what platforms that came out on, but the Famicom one is the one that's like the really big one, I feel like, or at least the one that is most notable for us in the West because we don't know anything about Japanese PCs, and or at least a lot of us don't. And so they had like some kind of AI tech demo thing that most people seem to be pretty down on for the most part. But even the developers in the interview I read afterwards were like, yeah, I mean, it's a commercial compact version of AI communication software. And they're like, so, it's not great. It's not like we have a academic connection for certain like AI models and things like that, which I thought was like an interesting thing. I'm sure we talked about it back. Go look at Portopia or do search Portopia on the One Support website. I'm going to guess it will show up there probably. The podcast we talked about it will show up there. But there was a new one that was put out. I don't know which company this is, but there's a visual novel, or at least I would call it visual novel in the Western sense, game called Saya no Uta. And they are doing an AI app version of that, or AI, like, again, how much is it a version of it? It is a experimental release. So it does not seem like it's not being sold as like a product. It is a free thing they put out that's more of a test thing. Specifically, they were like, hey, we can't guarantee the quality of the text and also the quantity. It might repeat a lot of the same text and things like that. But it basically has you developing this relationship with, I think the character is Saya, and you get different endings based off of your affection. If you don't know, Saya no Uta is a game that, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that like it's a game with like a little lolly girl, but then you find out she's actually like a big flesh demon or something like that, and you just see her as a little lolly girl, basically. So, it is like that. So, I added lolly on the front of that. That's probably like not a cool thing to do for the most part. Like, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm so used to like anime stuff in like that space, like labeling that as a lolly. It probably should just say it's a girl, right? That probably makes sense to me. There you go. See, that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, where I was like, we are reevaluating ourselves in the moment. And you just get to hear it in real time. I was like, maybe I shouldn't have used the term lolly there. I mean, I don't think anyone here is upset about it. I just in the context of like, why use the term lolly there, right? I think it's like so trained to use that word as somebody who like came from the 4chan internet a long time ago, right? And just like, it probably just said Sai as a girl. I guess like it does define an age range maybe. And like aesthetically, anime characters that age, like you would call it that maybe. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. Let me know. I would be curious to know what is the current dynamics of the word lolly. So I feel like it is still around, but I feel like it's only really used in the context now of like sexualization. And I don't know if Saya no Uta I don't think it is. I don't think it has like sexual content in it. Again, very popular visual novel that I will probably never in my life recognize as something I'll ever play. So that doesn't mean it's not good. I just have no interest. So, but I'm always interested in seeing different little tests and things like that. And I didn't get to see if there's any impressions of this, but if I do stumble across any, I will let you know, and we'll talk about it a little bit, because I think the AI for dialogue stuff is kind of interesting. If only because it adds more dynamic levels to like dialogue. I mean, there's the other side of AI stuff where it's like, oh, let's take jobs away. But, you know, that is a whole other thing and a whole can of worms to open there. It's like, oh, we don't want people to write dialogue. But like, I think what the benefit from a game development standpoint, you know, if we're not thinking about financials, right, is just the ability for an AI to, you know, dynamically create dialogue. And so, you know, no set of lines would be the same. But that means there's a lot of sacrifices that are going to come with that, right? You're probably going to get story points that are based around things that like are dialogue that would imply things in the story that not every person's going to see, or maybe even get conflicting responses, right? But you could, you know, potentially embrace that, right? That's kind of the other thing. Like, oh, well, every person's experience with this character is different, right? And so it doesn't necessarily have to be the same one every time, kind of thing, right? That is like the idealized version of that. I'm not saying we're going to get there anytime soon, or that's what the actual reality will be. But I think that is what you look at when you're asking, like, what can AI do for game development, right? I think the thing I always try to stand by with this stuff, especially like things that are more, you know, sensitive topics when it comes to this kind of tech, is that, you know, I don't necessarily know what's realistic or not. And I try not to push that. I'm like, yes, this is absolutely what's going to happen, because heck if I know. Look, just a few months ago, there was a man asking the question, who wants Dragon Quest Champions? And apparently, in the short term, a lot of people want Dragon Quest Champions. So never trust my opinion on what will succeed, what will happen, who will make what, why they made what. We're just here to talk about Valis Cups. Thank you for coming this week. OneSword.com is the website. Hope you have a great weekend this week. Week. You're listening to this on Monday probably, so I hope you have a good week. Yeah. Other than that, the Monolith Soft video came out late last week. I forgot to put it out on Wednesday, so I put it out on Friday. So if you want to go check out my re-ranking videos of, well, it's a ranking of Future Redeemed, Future Connected, and a re-ranking of Xenosaga. This is an older video, I will say. It was a part of the whole like Ko-fi exclusive video stuff. So it is an older one, just as a heads up. But that was the last of that set. So that is all done. And then whatever you get going forward is stuff I'm just throwing together now, which, you know, not trying to do a set schedule for the OCP Plus channel at this point. So stuff will show up when it makes sense. So if you're looking for stuff every week, sorry. This podcast is my voice to you every week. So there you go. Served it on a platter to you through my mouth. That's it, though. I guess I'll talk about you next time. How about that? How do you feel about that? Goodbye.